computer.
So we all have to say, got it.
Welcome everyone. We're so excited this morning, kind of almost piggybacking on our last talk with Nancy 2 weeks ago. She mentioned Adah Rose in her talk about one of the people that really made her excited about art. So it's only fitting that we follow up with the Adah Rose in person. She has been, how long have you been in the art business? Because I know you were a lawyer ahead of time.
Yeah, for 15 years, maybe almost 16 years.
Yeah, and the gallery that she has in Kensington has been open since 2011, and I encourage everybody to, after the show, or after this artist discussion this morning, to rush over to the gallery and see the work in person, because nothing beats art in life. Digital is great, but seeing in person is definitely worth it too. So I would like to welcome the incredible Adah Rose.
Thank you.
to the ACO.
Thank you. So I don't know who's here in the audience, but I just wanted to say that if you have any questions, interrupt me at any time during the talk, because I like to have conversations back and forth. I'm not a lecturer, but I have a little talk prepared with some artists, and I have my screen behind me, I think. I don't see it now. It suddenly disappeared. I got to find it. And do you guys see my screen?
Yes, we.
Okay,
yes,
good.
We do.
Okay. I don't know why mine just, oh, here, there it is. Okay, I had to hit got it. Anyway, yes, like Jordan said, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm always happy to talk to artists or art people interested in art, curators, anyone in the art world. I did start the gallery in 2011. It's hard for me to believe that, you know, it's over 11 years old now. I sort of thought I'd last 1 year. I'll tell you quickly how the gallery started. I was the gallery director at Studio Gallery, which is an artist cooperative in DuPont Circle, for about 4.5 years. And I really always loved art. I grew up in Europe. I followed the art world. I took lots of art classes and art history classes in college. And so the art was always a very important part for me, but I used to be a lawyer, and I became a public health lawyer. And then when I was getting ready to go back to public health school, I was interested in, I mean, not public health school, when I was going back to be a career as my kids were growing up, my daughter was in college and my son was, I think, a junior in high school. I started looking on Craigslist for kind of legal medical jobs, and a little ad popped up for an art gallery director, and that was Studio Gallery. And it's a long story, but I started there, and I thought, well, I could always work in public health, but I don't know if I'll ever get a job in the art world. And so I really learned I knew a lot of art history and about art. I didn't know about the business side of art. And so that was something that I really learned, how to talk about art, how to greet people, how to try to kind of promote collecting art. And so I have a very good friend named Biba, who I'm actually in her studio now. My gallery is now in her studio. And she became a friend because I volunteered in Kensington for like, I don't know, 13 years at this little store called the Prevention of Blindness Shop. And one day, Biba, who's an artist and a teacher, came to me and she said, I'm giving up my space. That was her initial space. And that's where I started the gallery next door. And she said, the rent is blah, 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 blah. And I thought, wow, you know, I could afford that. I'll try it for a year. So it was pure serendipity, really, that the gallery happened. And when I started it 11 years ago, galleries were closing right and left in DC, in the DC area. Now there seems to be a wonderful renaissance. There's so many new little galleries opening up, and many of them are artist driven, and that's really makes me happy. But at the time they were closing and there were very few. So I thought, I'll give it a try. I also knew that I would need to go to the art fairs because I knew a little gallery in Kensington, Maryland was not going to get a lot of people. I've been very lucky, especially since Mark Jenkins came, that the Post reviews the show. But before he was the reviewer at the Post, I don't think the Post ever came out here. And it's very hard, you know, to be in Kensington, which is actually an area that's changing. And I want to talk about that too. But when I first started, it was really in an antiques district, and it still is half and half an antiques district. But anyway, well, I'll talk about that right now. So right now in Kensington, a lot of the art, there's many artist studios on the other side of Connecticut Avenue, which is an industrial side. And in fact, 2 artists that I show are on that side. There's also a brand new gallery, Pazzo Fine Art, which had opened there about a year ago. And then on my side here in Kensington, which is like sort of Old Town Kensington, there's a brand new studio gallery called Girls Who Paint, founded by 2 lovely women painters, super energetic and very inclusive. And they do lessons out of their space too. So if you come to Kensington, you're not just coming to see my gallery, you're going to see a nice little art world. So anyway, that was really, really wonderful. When I first started the gallery, I had a big interest in text-based work. I've always liked art that includes words, or is about literature, is about words. And that was a small subspecialty. It's not that much of a subspecialty anymore, but you'll see that a number of the artists that I show use words in their work, or reference literature or reference words. And so that's been fun. Many people, the thing I get asked the most is, how do you find your artists? And I have to say that a lot of that is serendipity too. When I first started the gallery, I went to college in California, in a place called Claremont, California, and there's 5 colleges there and a graduate school. And the Claremont Graduate School was always an excellent painting school. I think it's still pretty much stayed a painting school. It doesn't have that much photography or mixed media or sculpture. I think it's pretty much a painting school still, but there was a long tradition there. And so I looked at my own college, and I looked to Claremont Graduate School to see if there were any artists coming out of the MFA programs that I could look at, because I have an affinity for there. And then, because I had been at Studio Gallery, a couple of the Studio Gallery artists formed my first shows in my gallery, because I obviously was very close to a lot of them. So I go to so many art shows. I go in New York. I go when I'm traveling the world, anywhere I am, obviously in Washington, D.C. So I'm always looking at artists' work. I don't accept I guess you call it solicitations or entries to the gallery. I am not a rejecter. I feel very, very strongly about that. You could be the most famous artist in the world, and you could walk in my gallery or send me an email. I will not look at the work, because I don't want to be rejecting your work. I know it's really hard to be an artist. So I just have sort of a blanket policy. I find my artists. Again, I'm never looking, but that being said, someone will cross my path. And that happened last year. And I'll say, wow, I want to show this artist. So, and people, galleries evolve. Where I was 11 years ago or 11 and a half years ago is very different than where I am today. What my motivations are, what I want to do. Any questions? Anybody want to jump in with a question or anything yet? No? Okay, I'll just keep talking. And then, so anyway, so from that Claremont group, I have one of the first artists I've shown was Jessica Drank, who contacted me. She actually was from Pomona College. She's much younger than me. I think she's 41 today, and that was my college. She's an amazing artist who does use text and books in her work a lot. And I feel it was just so much luck that I get to represent Jessica. She was the first artist I took to an art fair in Miami, and I knew I was very proud that we applied together and got into Pulse that first year. And I've shown her many, many times in many, many fairs, but mostly in solo shows in the gallery. We have a wonderful relationship. When I first met her, she was living in, I think, South Carolina. She then moved to Florida. She then moved to upstate New York, where she is now. And she grew up in Montana, though, so the natural world is a big part of her art, and you're going to see that soon. And then I also represent 2 other artists from that Claremont group, Allison Rash and Chris Truman, who have become very good friends. Chris is still in LA. He's sort of my guru. He knows everything that's happening in the contemporary art world, and he taught me a lot. So as much as I try to teach my artists a little, they teach me a lot more, which is really wonderful. And then Allie, who is one of the bravest. I'm not showing her work here in the slideshow, but she's one of the bravest artists I know. I work very, very hard to always show her work. She's been fighting cancer for the last 10 years. She has little kids that are starting to grow up, and she's one of the most generous artists. She's always raising money for her model. It's an amazing model. And if anybody's interested in that, I can tell you about that, but always raising money for other people too. So anyway, I'm going to get into the talk of some of the artists. I'm going to show 7 artists. And again, you can stop me at any time with any questions, but just want to talk about each of them briefly. The reason I'm showing this 7 is I thought it was a nice variety. So this is Jessica Drank, which is the first artist I was telling you about. So Jessica uses man-made materials and returns them to nature. She's basically referencing that everything man-made could eventually come from nature or will, and she's returning them. And so in many ways, she's creating fossils for our time. This beautiful piece is made from the number 2 pencil. It's just, and she also loves multiple. So I hope you guys can see it well. On the inside, you can see the actual pencils. The outside is where she's carved it. And it's very tedious to create. She's gluing these pieces together. And the artistry really comes in the sculpting and the sanding and shaping each one of these wonderful sculptures. This is one of her newest series. And this is made from junk mail. She's very aware of the environmental impact of using materials, and artists are starting to recognize that, artists aren't so great on their impact on the environment. So this is all made from junk mail that Jessica collects, and it's a very long process. I won't tell you about it, but that she collects, and she creates them by color, and they're just amazing. And again, obviously, it looks like it's something that came from nature. Here's a little bit of close-up so you can sort of see the color running through it and maybe the text on the side, so you realize that they're magazines. And then this piece is made from PVC pipes. It's called Wave, that she carves and sands, and again, makes it look very, very natural. And it's always fun in the gallery or at a show to see what people think about when they see that. Everybody says, oh, that reminds me of, blah, 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 blah. So that's Jessica. The next artist I'm going to show, and you'll see that I do a proud half figurative and abstract work. I don't have a preference. It's just the artist and the art and what speaks to me. So I like them equally. Nathan Loda is a young painter who I met. I got to curate and jury a show at George Mason. Sometimes I get asked to jury and curate, and I really love doing that outside. And one year I got to do it at George Mason University in Northern Virginia. And I really liked Nathan. He grew up here in Washington, D.C., but he now lives in, he was in an MFA program at George Mason. He now lives in upstate New York. And he's a wonderful figurative painter, and he has an upcoming show in the gallery. And in this series, his work can be very different. Sometimes it's very historically based. It's about family history, American history, the great Hudson River painters. But in this show, he's limiting his palette, and I'm very excited. I have not seen this painting live. It's coming in. His show will be December 3rd in the gallery. He's a great raconteur. If you could have an artist who could sell their work, it would be Nathan Loda. He can tell you everything, and he touches base and connects to every person he talks to, and he's just so much fun. But he really believes in art and painting. He's also a very generous artist in that he likes so much art, and he's always complimenting his fellow artists about work. This is another one in that series, and this one's a little homage to Joseph Albers. Again, another beautiful landscape painting in a pretty limited palette, but you see that Joseph Albers square and the sense of color and color theory. And so I think there's going to be a number of those paintings in the show. This is the first I've seen. And here's another one from that series too. And I love those little fireflies and, that nice, beautiful, surreal landscape. Next is Maremi Andriazzi, who is a painter who lives and works in Northern Virginia. And Maremi has started the series of women in history. She calls the series called History Adorned. And she's taking women in history, some who were well known. When she first began the series, she began sort of in the 15th and 16th century with queens and famous rulers and gradually has come into the present, not present day. She hasn't ever come into the 20th century. So they're all 19th century and earlier. And this woman this is a new series that she started called Healers. And this woman was an African-American slave who won her manumission because she used herbs and gathered them and used them. And I guess there was some plague in, I think this is 17th century America. And she used them to heal people, and she gained her manumission through that. And then she went on to pay for the freedom of other slave women who also were healers. So in many of her paintings, Mariana will kind of reference what the person was about or their history. And here you can see the herbs in the background. And so there's I think there's 9 in this healer series. I was really excited. I'm going to be doing this little art fair in New Jersey called Art Fair 14C. And I did it. This will be my 3rd year doing it. But the first year we did it, again, the long game in the art world, it was in a little hotel room in New Jersey. It's since changed into a full-fledged fair. But one of the curators from the Zimmerli Museum at Rutgers contacted me about 9 or 10 months later. She had remembered the work and I had followed up and sent her images. And so her work was acquired by that museum. And then 6 of her portraits just got selected to be in the Art in Embassies program in Vienna. So I posted that on Instagram today. And so we're both very excited about that. And for those of you who don't know, the State Department runs this Arts and Embassies program where you loan the work to an embassy somewhere in the world that they select. So this is the first of those portraits. This is George Sand, so very different, a 19th century French writer who also was an artist. I grew up knowing her as a writer, but when I was in Paris, and I go there all the time, I went to this museum called La Musée de la Vie Romantique, which is the romantic world. And it shows that George Sand was a really serious painter too. So again, you can see the dress in the History Adorned series. It's about their dress, it's about their adornments, their earrings, the hair, the hats. And there's so many in this series. They're just wonderful. And I could send, if anybody's interested in seeing the full list, I can send it. And so a famous writer. So again, it's international. They're from Africa, South America, Europe, the United States, from all over the world. And this is one of my favorites. This is a double portrait by Mariana. And these were 2 African-American sisters in the 19th century from California, I believe, who began a musical theater troupe. And so they would do performances. And I think the details in the costumes are amazing. And often Mariana, not often, she always researches these very thoroughly. And on the back is a little bio. On the back of every painting is a bio of the people. And for this one, I know she looked at the Met's Costume Institute. She does that often. So if there's a portrait of the people, and often there isn't, of the sitters, then she'll kind of reference that sometimes in her portraits, but she does a lot of research. And so you can see all the beautiful details here and in their dress. The next artist I wanted to show you is a real minimalist. You wouldn't know from that portrait of Mariana I just showed you, but I've always loved minimalism. And I have number of artists in the gallery who I think of as minimalists. This is Wesley Berg, who was one of those artists who I said, I'm not taking on any new artists, but then I saw his work and I thought, oh, I really want to show him. And he started with the gallery probably about 4 years ago. And he was an academic when I met him. He was teaching in a university in Texas, North Texas. He's originally from Ohio, but he has since moved back to Ohio with his wife and family. He has 2 tiny little kids, and he's a full-time painter now and kind of stay-at-home dad. And I love this series. You can see it's really about gesture, and with the graphite, so it's gouache or watercolor on white paper, usually watercolor paper. And then with the pencil, he's always creating volume and weight and depth. And so I'm just going to show you a few. These are some of the newer ones. They're very, very playful, very, very happy pieces, but you can see the shadows just really kind of make them. So those are Wesley's. The next artist is Gabe Brown. She's a woman. She lives and works in the Hudson Valley of New York, and that is my current solo show in the gallery. I think I met Gabe. We both can't remember, but I think it was on Instagram. So that's the wonderful world of Instagram, which I can talk about too if people have any questions. But anyway, I remember seeing one of her paintings and thinking, oh, I just love this painting. So this is a large painting, but most of Gabe's paintings when I met her were 16 by 12. That's sort of her ideal size. It's a pretty small painting. They're all abstract landscapes. They're all oil on linen over panel or oil on canvas over panel. And she's working with the same motifs, pretty much painting by painting by painting. But each one is its own unique world. You can see rainbows and water and leaves and mountains, and they're all painted freehand. And she starts with layers and layers. And she also has a watercolor practice too. So she does very similar works, but they have a completely different energy. She works in watercolor. So these are 3 in the show. You can see the 2 palettes, how different they are. But again, you're seeing this similar motifs over and over again. And there's the 3rd one from the current show. She's referencing landscape on many different levels, and often this motif here is a reference to sort of the cellular level of nature and also how nature heals itself. It can be heard. That second one was, she was in Portugal and Spain this summer, and there were terrible wildfires everywhere. So they could be very, very destructive, and you can see, but they were also very beautiful. The sky was lit up. And so in a very subtle way, she's talking about climate change too, and our environment and how important it is to protect nature. And there's this one. The next artist is a sort of another minimalist too. She does a variety of work, and this is Ann Smith, who I also met in that same class. Well, I didn't meet her then, but at George Mason University with Nathan Loda. I had met Ann a few years before when I was at Studio Gallery. I was invited to curate a show there called The Magic of the Melting Pot. It was about immigration and artists. And Ann was the studio assistant for Lou Stovall, a wonderful DC artist that we showed in that show. And that's when I met Ann. And I really liked her. And I said, we should do a little show together. She goes, well, Adah Rose, I'm going to go to George Mason for 3 years, but at the end of my time at George Mason, I'd love to. So I very patiently waited. And Ann does many, many different things. She mostly has a drawing practice and a sculpture practice and a screen print. A large screen print practice. And this is one of her screen prints. And she's just a master at screen printing. And she thinks she learned a lot from Lou Stovall too about technique, but obviously at George Mason, she did too. And from her own, her own talent. And she does these as limited edition screen prints. There's usually 2 in a series. And each one is obviously different because she's laying down the paint uniquely. Screen printing is so complicated for me to explain. I can see it and I understand it, but I can never explain it. This was a very beautiful series that we did in the gallery. And I still have some of them, but this was a series that she did with charcoal and graphite. So she did layers and layers and layers and layers of very, very black charcoal, you can see here. And then she came in with the graphite and drew. And so the graphite looks very silver against that dark charcoal. And then this was the last show she did in the gallery where it was a lot of figurative work. It was about nature. It was during COVID, how we were all so influenced by nature and how nature was so restorative and healing for us. And even though these were done in winter and the trees didn't have leaves, they were really, really beautiful. And you could get that sense of how important nature was for all of us. And there were 4 of these in this series. And then there were colored pencil drawings of trees too. I think this is the last artist I'm doing. Yeah, this is Joanne Belmar, who is an artist who used to live in Washington, D.C., now lives in upstate New York. Joanne was an early artist that I showed in the gallery. I think he was either my second or third show in the gallery. And he sort of works in 2 styles. He's originally from Chile, and he emigrated to Spain, where he changed his name from Juan to Joan, because that's very Spanish. And then he came to the United States, and he was in DC, I'm going to guess, for maybe 10 years or more. And that's when I met him. I met him here in DC, and we've had a couple of shows of his in the gallery, and I've shown him at art fairs. And he works in 2 styles. This is where he works with Mylar, and this one's kind of a little hard to see, but I thought it was very beautiful, where he paints on the back of a piece of plexiglass. Then he hand dyes Mylar, and he sculpts it in between 2 pieces of plexi. And then he paints on the back of this top piece of plexi, and that's where you see this blue and these dots. And so they're all very dimensional, and they're referencing maps and physics and, sort of outer space, kind of the global world. This is another one of Joanne's works on paper. And you can see starting with sort of washes of color. This is all done up here, layer on layer on layer on layer of paint. everybody thinks they're prints, but they are actually just print paintings. And this is one of the newest ones that he sent into the gallery, which I think actually on this series, he starts with a basic woodcut that you can see on the background, and then he paints on top of that. And this one's a little homage to Ukraine, he told me. You can see that perhaps in the colors. Okay. Okay, so at this point, I just want to see if there's any questions or anything.
I definitely have questions. I guess my first question would be, I mean, you have such a diverse group of artists that you're representing, or is showing us today. Do you find—
Oh, and it's even more diverse, yeah.
I imagine. Do you find yourself, I mean, how much do you think of it is when you select your artists, is the artists themselves in terms of their personality, or how they talk about their work versus the actual work? Do you think it's important to be a raconteur, like you mentioned earlier, when you're artists, as an artist and selling your work? Does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, no, it does. Absolutely. I always say this and people always like stop in their tracks, and I'll never say who it is. And often my mind changes, but I have the gallery for artists. I believe in artists. I like art. Don't get me wrong. I love art, but I believe in artists more. So I have the gallery, and the shows I have had in the gallery. Sometimes it's the art that just speaks to me first, and then I meet the artist, but I have to like the artist. I have to like them, and they have to like me. And, you know, it doesn't always work out. There's people I've shown in the gallery who've gone on, and my feelings are not hurt. I understand that it might not have been a good fit, or I'm not, aggressive enough. I'm not an aggressive gallerist at all. I really believe in showing the work and explaining the work and talking about the work. But if you walk in the door, I'm not here to sell you the piece right then and there. You know, I really want people to get to know the gallery, get to know the artist. Of course, I'm delighted to sell the work, but anyway, so that is really important. That's a really good question. So yes, I've had shows in the gallery where I did not like the work, but when I say I don't want to say I didn't like it. It wasn't my favorite work, but I really like the artist. And that's very important to me. And I'm going to say almost all of the time, because you sit a show, you see the work over time, I've come to really like the work. And again, I have to think it's good work. Don't get me wrong. But people will say, well, show my work, and it's not good work. And no, you have to be a serious artist. I want artists that are serious artists. You don't want somebody to come in and say, well, I paint like once or twice a week or once or twice a month. And, I take long breaks. No, I'm here. I'm a gallery for serious artists like you are. I want it to be for full-time artists. Again, you can obviously, and you should have another job unless you're making a living as an artist. But I want the person to be essentially a full-time artist. It's always wonderful as a gallerist when you have the great raconteur, but as a rule, I'm going to say most artists are not great raconteurs. Some are, but some are not. I mean, the nature of art is that you work alone in your studio. But I do want artists who are serious, who want to talk about their art. They can just talk about it to me, or they can talk about it to a group of artists or friends, but they have to be thinking about it, thinking about art. And I particularly also like artists, and I'm sure all galleries would say this, that are out in the world. When I say out in the world, it doesn't mean that you're looking at art every day, but that you're thinking about art, or you're looking online and you know what's happening in the greater art world. What's MoMA showing now? What's the Met showing? What's the Tate showing? You want artists that are a little bit aware of the art world, or LACMA, but what's going on in the art world too, because it's important, I think, as a profession. I've sometimes had artists tell me I don't look at any other work because it would just really, I think it's going to influence my work. And I don't understand that statement at all. If you were a novelist and you said you never read another novel, I don't think any of us would understand that. So I think artists need to know what's going on in the art world. That being said, sometimes you'll spend a day a month finding out about it. Some people will spend 2 days a week. Everyone's different, but I think it's important to be engaged with the art world.
Mm-hmm. I guess the follow-up question would be, like, do you think there's room for those wallflower type artists who are maybe not the best of verbal speakers, but speak well through their actual work? Because you look at platforms like Instagram, for instance, where it seems to be dominated by the flashy, videos of people painting on fast speeds, where it magically appears, where it almost feels like the process and how it's presented on the social media platform is is how you get known or noticed. And
Yeah,
I sometimes feel that a lot of talent gets almost washed over in this environment. Do you find that?
Oh, no, yes, no. I mean, I have artists in my gallery who are very, very quiet, very, very withdrawn. That being said, they know what's going on in the world. They're reading about it. As long as they can talk to me about it, that's all I care about. Yeah. And obviously, if they're going to have a show in the gallery, they have to be able to stand there for, 2 hours, one time over 6 weeks. But a lot of artists, even when they're terribly, terribly shy, and again, I can name 4 or 5 in my gallery that are terribly, terribly shy. But in this little world, they have to be able to come in, and they want to come in. I don't want to make it sound like I'm making them either. They want to. But yes, you're right. It is a flashy world out there, but there's so much quiet art. And that's why I told you I love minimalism. There's so much quiet art that people are paying attention to, and so many quiet artists too.
That's good. Does anyone have any questions besides me? Mariana, go ahead.
Yes. Adah, this is fascinating, by the way, thank you. How do you feel about group shows, or do you ever do them? What do you see that?
Yeah. So I'll tell you about that, because actually I do a very big group show in the summer, and I'm going to get to, Jordan had asked me a little bit about interns before. So every summer I have interns in the gallery. It's all, again, serendipity. Somebody knows somebody who refers them to me. I don't look for them, but I have been so lucky and had the most amazing interns for all these 11 years. And a lot of them are my really good friends, and they've gone on to do great things. Actually, Layla Jadala, who was an intern of mine at Studio Gallery, is now the curator at the Qatar Institute for Culture, and another one of my interns was at the National Gallery for many years, and she's just gone to Smithsonian American Art. But so anyway, many of them have gone on to do many things and gone on to graduate school. So I'm very, very close to them. And in the summer, we do a show called Carte Blanche. And so it's a big group show. I tend to use all the artwork that I have in the gallery and artists, and then we invite a few guest artists for that Carte Blanche show. And that I let the interns curate. So they're every 2 weeks, the walls in this gallery, and it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun, are changed. And they're making relationships and curating, and they have to write every time they come in, they're writing about it. And when they first come in, a couple of them like writing initially, but at the end, they all love writing. They love writing about the art. It's very important. So this summer I had 2 interns who were both artists. The summer before that, I had 2 artists, but often they're art history people. They're going to go on curatorial roles or be in the, in the kind of in the museum world or nonprofit art world or whatever. So, but I like them equally. And I've had interns who just have an interest in art who go on to become lawyers and doctors. I welcome anybody as long as they have an interest in art. So anyway, it's been really fun, and I love that. And so those group shows are a lot of work, but they're a lot of fun. And I love how dynamic it is in the gallery. We hang salon style, and it's amazing to see what relationships, what magical things happen always in a gallery.
Wow.
They're the ones creating that. I have a satellite space next door where the gallery originally was, and I use that for storage, but our storage is salon style storage. So it's always, that's always changing. So often during the academic year, I say school year, I don't know why I said that, academic year, the former interns will come back, or there's be an artist I know, like Martina, who's in Kensington, and I'll say, would you like to curate this wall today? And they'll come in on a Saturday morning and they'll curate the wall. So I love that. We do that at that time. Yeah. So I try to keep it, as busy as possible.
And if someone was an adult studying from, maybe starting art from another profession, or always was interested and now exploring it more, how would they, what advice do you have for them to learn more about the gallery world? Well,
I guess my advice is just to visit. When you visit a gallery, you see so much. And so, like I said, we have this growth of galleries here. We have East City Art, which is sends out a notice, at least once a week and tells you where shows are opening. So if somebody comes into my gallery and says, I want to know more about the gallery world, I always say, sign up for eCity Art, and I'm always telling them about, ways to find out more about the art world here. And I'll tell them about Washington Project for the Arts. But basically now on eCity Art, you can kind of find out everything, Glen Echo, I mean, everybody lists there, right? So it's wonderful. I always say, don't be intimidated, go to openings. They're really fun. But a lot of people who aren't in the art world don't like to go. You probably see this, Jordan. I see it at my gallery. Most openings are attended by artists and a few friends of the artists who show. But I always say, thank God for my artist friends who show up for the openings, because you want people there. But I always tell other people to go too, because you just never know. You can get into a conversation with somebody. You get to have a conversation with the artist. It's really wonderful, I think. And so it was weird during COVID. So when I had my first opening again in the gallery, we had one in June, but it was still kind of hybrid-y then. I mean, we didn't have masks in the gallery, but a lot of people didn't want to come. But Gabe, my current show, was the first opening that we've really had where anybody could come and be a part of it. And I did have about 15 friends say, I'm not going to come. I don't feel comfortable, which I totally understand. But they came later, to see the show. But anyway, yeah. So, but I think openings are really wonderful and fun. And I think when you're in a place like New York or London or Chicago or LA, where there's gallery, it's so fun to go to those gallery districts. You see everything and you can expose yourself to so much if you're really interested in that world. And obviously I love museums. And that's a wonderful place to go. And now we have this new museum in Washington, the Rubel. So there's yet another wonderful place to visit.
Have you noticed any, like major trends in the art world that you are excited about or feel are going to kind of change the way that we think about art? Like a type of artist being represented or celebrated?
That's a really good question. I don't know, because I think that, so much has been written about the world of abstraction dominated the art world, and now figuration came in. And so I think they're going to live side by side. I guess I am, because of Instagram, I think, and maybe social media. I think what is wonderful is an artist in Kenya or an artist in Sri Lanka or an artist in, Timbuktu is going to maybe get noticed. They're posting these things. And I keep hearing story after story. This artist, Chris Truman, that I represent in LA, he was very early. And I think also those artists that were early on Instagram really benefited well too. But anyway, Chris was on pretty early, I think, but a gallery in Australia saw his work in Brisbane and they represented now. And that's a pretty wonderful thing that happens. I guess the only thing, maybe I'll answer that is anything new. I think artists are much more involved in the art world now. And I see so many artist curated shows and artists coming in with artist friends or artists that they respect. And so I see a lot of artist generated kind of work. I mean, not the work, obviously they're creating the work, but shows. That's a better word. That's a better way of saying it. And it can be in a little pop-up space here and a little pop-up space there. You don't have to have the gallery model always.
That's good. Do you know, if you have advice to those artists who are looking for that opportunity to show with friends or whatever, is that something, they find just through eCity or how do you think artists find opportunities, specifically in Washington, D.C. area?
In the area, right.
Well, I mean, we have so many nonprofit art spaces that you have to be on their email lists for. So we have Glen Echo, we have Arlington Art Center, we have Reston, which is now Tefra. We have, Viz Arts. We have, I'm just forgetting the one in Gaithersburg. Sorry. But anyway, Black Center for the Arts, Prince George's County. There's always call for artists. So it's a job when you're an artist. So if artists say, well, it was a very cute story. It was about 4 years ago. A man came to me, had moved here from New York, and I'm going to guess he was about 80 years old, and he had had a lot of success. And he said, I miss the days where the curators just came to your studio and found you. And I said, well, that world doesn't exist anymore. And it doesn't. You know, it's a very rare world, maybe occasionally, but you have to be in the world as an artist, and you can be in the world in many different ways.
Yeah.
Again, if you're shy, you apply online for the shows. If you want to go to an opening, but you feel so intimidated, you bring a friend, you ask a friend to go with you, and you're just quiet and stay there quietly. I do artist talks in my gallery, and actually Mariana Andriazzi, one of the artists that I represent, came to those talks. She was thoughtful. I loved what she had to say. David at Otis Street runs these artist talks, or he did. I mean, obviously everything changed with the pandemic, and I think it's coming back. So some of the things I'm talking about maybe haven't returned totally, but you have to just be in the audience or be there and be in the world. But there are so many, I'm amazed how many calls for artists. There are so many, like if you go onto Instagram, like I just saw this morning, there's another group out of London, but they post job opportunities, calls for artists all over the world. So you have to, again, you don't want to apply for all of them. You can't, but part of your job as an artist is creating the art, and part of it is getting your art in the world.
Yeah.
Right. It's the hard part.
And that's the hard part. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the hard part. But again, it's hard for a gallery too. People think I open the doors of my gallery and I hang the art and people come flooding in. It's the least interesting and the least wonderful part of my job, but 75% of my job is marketing art. And it's not the part I like, but it's very important.
Yeah.
I love talking to artists. I love the intellectual side of art. I love writing about art. I love curating. I love hanging art. But again, 75% is marketing. For an artist, it shouldn't be 75. It should be maybe 40%. 60% creating.
I'm sure most artists would say, oh, even less would be nice.
Yeah.
Right. And do you collect art yourself? Do you find that?
Yes, I do buy art.
Sometimes.
I was thinking about that about a year ago. The first piece of art, I'm not a big collector of photography, but the first piece of art I ever bought, I remember I was 19 years old. My parents lived in Dallas, and there was this very good photography gallery in Dallas. And there was this photograph, and I wanted it. And I remember it was probably like $200, which was like $20,000. And my parents, who really believed in it too, said, you can pay us $25 a month, but we'll buy it. And that was the first piece of art I bought. And I was only 19 years old. I believe in that in my gallery. They might not go on to collect in my gallery, but if a 20-year-old or 21-year-old comes into my gallery and wants to buy art, yes, I will discount it. Yes, I will do everything. Let them pay in installments. It could be $100 piece. It could be $1,000 piece. Because once you buy your first piece of art or your second piece of art, you become a collector.
Right.
And it might be very gradual, but it's really important. I really want to facilitate that. So even in my own gallery today, there are works of art in my gallery that are $50 or $100, and I have works in my gallery that are $10,000. I want to have that range. I'm unusual that way. I think most galleries don't do that.
And how do you feel about prints, or do you help your artists to make prints, or what do you think about that balance of printing, a low cost sample?
That's not something that I pretty much have in the gallery. If you are a printmaker and the work is a print, I love that. We have lots of prints in the gallery, but I don't show, like if it's a painting and you do a clay print of it, I don't show that work.
Yeah, I should have said copies rather than prints.
But I love prints. Printmaking as an art form, I love. Right. And it's very complex, very complex.
But not copies, like clay prints is what
I don't have that in the gallery. Again, many artists do that and they can make a nice amount of money from that. I'm not against it, but it's not for me in my gallery.
Right.
I don't think there's one right way. I think if you get anything out of this, there's not one right way. Everybody just develops their own world that they can. We do the best we can, but we're all missionaries for art.
Right.
Question. Besides going to art fairs, how do you market the artists you represent?
Emails. I'm sending out emails all the time. Yeah.
Do you have a distribution list that we can sign up for? Adah, I'm sure you do.
I have an email list. Yeah. If you go onto my website, it'll say, just send me an email and I'll put you on our email list. Yeah. Love it. Wonderful. And I don't send out too many emails. I try not to. I try to send out maybe 1 a month or 2 a month at most. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Sometimes around the holidays, I'll have two or three emails, but very rarely. Yeah. But I'm very, again, I don't want to make it sound like I sell art a lot on Instagram or Facebook, but I know it brings people in. So I do say, if you're an artist, even if you post once a week, be on Instagram.
I always recommend, at least to students or whomever, that even if you're resistant to that media platform, you don't have to follow your friends, but
Exactly.
if you are, then you follow them. So it's just use that platform, not to see baby pictures or wedding pictures.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
So I think
Right.
out of all the social media platforms, I think that at least Instagram is nice that way, that you can kind of remove noise rather easily and just focus on art and our process. You know?
Right.
And I know I should probably be on TikTok, but I can't do it. I'm just too old. But I know younger artists are on TikTok, and I think that, you know, and I'm sure younger gallerists are on TikTok. I'm just not. I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. Those are but I particularly love Instagram because I like to write on it, and I also like to read what people, and a lot of really smart, interesting people are writing on Instagram.
Well, thank you so much. Does anyone have any final questions for our incredible Adah Rose?
No, I just saw an app that I downloaded, but I haven't looked at it very much. It's called Musero, Musero. I was wondering if you've heard about it. And it's art-driven. I think it's like it's trying to compete with Instagram.
Yeah, no, I don't know about it. No.
Okay,
but I think there's going to be, it's going to be so many. And I think the bottom line is everybody should do what they want to do, what they can do, but you should do something.
Right. It's fantastic. And if you need any help from us as a group of people who just sort of foment the arts or bring together an arts community, what can we do for you?
Oh, that's so nice. You can just, what you said was just tell people, come on in, come look at art. Because, you know, as a gallery, again, I always want to sell art, but much more importantly, I want to show art. And I really would like, the conversations that take place in the gallery are very, very special. So I just want people to come in.
Great.
I love it.
And how do you maintain your walls? Like literally making holes in them. What do you do?
I didn't hear the question. What do I do with my walls?
I'm sorry. How do you keep up with your walls?
Are you asking about spackles?
I spackle and paint constantly. Yeah. Oh, I'm always spackling and painting. And once a year, I do a really good paint job, but I paint every 4, 5, 6 weeks. I'm painting in this gallery.
So you're a painter also. Yay.
No, I'm this kind of a painter. Yes. Yeah. And a spackler.
all experiences are welcome. Yeah. Other questions, other comments, let me make sure that in the chat we're not missing something. Your approach is wonderful. I look forward to visiting the gallery, says Mary Beth.
Thank you.
Wow, me too, by the way. When I come back, I really very much want to visit. Would love to see you there. That's great.
Jordan, good luck in Miami.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll need it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Wow.
I find it really.
You're with a good crew.
I am with the best crew, but I always find it nerve-wracking and stressful to watch people walk by the art, or if they stop, like approaching them and then asking them, you have questions about the art. That part of it is just so hard. And so I like making the work up until then, and I've been hard, but it's I'm glad
it'll be great. I think a lot of people are going this year, which is really good.
Yeah, it's like a resurgence.
I have heard that. Yeah.
Okay,
that'll
good.
be wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so valuable. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Take good
Thank
care.
you.
Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you too.